Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Megan Johnson, and on behalf of Carahsoft Technology Corporation, I would like to welcome you to our webinar with Marion Square, Force Management, and Carahsoft, aligning sales strategies with DOGE priorities, navigating the new federal marketplace.
Nice. Thanks everybody for joining us. I think we have 500 people online today. An interesting topic um, that is important and very, very timely. So thanks everybody for joining us. Let me just set the tone a little bit, give you a few observations that we've been seeing going on in the market, and begin to open up the conversation that Harvey's going to take on today. A number of weeks ago, we saw this executive order by around consolidating procurement and GSA taking over more of the going back to taking over more of the procurement functions, and still up in the air how all this is going to play out, but a logical premise around streamlining some of this procurement activity in the government. And then this OneGov strategy and how do the vendors get closer to the government and, hey, maybe have a single price into the government that's a great price as opposed to 300 different price points for every different agency. So a logical premise around some of their initiatives. And then we saw April 17th and April 9th, a GSA not happy with the conversations they've had with some of the big primes. And then you saw in the press over the last few weeks, the deal first started Google offering some substantial discounts and offerings to the federal government between now and September 30th. Then Adobe reached an agreement for some really interesting and valuable bundles a couple of weeks ago. And then Monday was the press release that Salesforce is offering an offering around their Slack tool. All these announcements are off of our GSA schedule contracts and are being supported by our team, and resellers are still engaged in helping create demand. And we've got a big demand push on all three of these to go help Google and Adobe and Salesforce market and merchandise these new offerings. And then about a month and a half ago, we got a bunch of requests, and many of you guys saw it, but a bunch of requests for software inventory runs for many different agencies. We did a bunch of work with the vendors to go pull some of this data for our customers. And the initial set of data was kind of a logical software inventory. And then a couple of days later, we got another inventory request with a few more fields. And a couple of days after that, we got an inventory request, and it had a bunch of other fields. Hey, how important is this to us? How do we justify this? What is the use case for it? How do we scale up this contract? And we looked at this and we said, hey, geez, every one of our vendors, every one of our resellers, with every single one of our customers and every single order within those customers, we're going to all have to resell every single deal and make sure our customers know the value of the software that they're buying and the software that they've invested in and the full capabilities of it. And the first time we looked at this, we're going to have to resell every single deal. And then we kind of swung our mindset back to, no, guys, we get to resell every deal. And if you look at those questions the government's asking, it's an opportunity for us to all go in and make sure the customer's getting full value on every bit of software they own, that if they own it, they're using all the features, that they don't own three products that do all the same thing, that they optimize their use of it. And I think this is a huge opportunity for us. This business of supporting the government is collectively our craft. And you guys all attend the Rob Efris budget breakfast every year. I think this event is a a similar reason for doing it as the Rob Effers one is we're all trying to figure out how to do a better job supporting our government customers and making sure they get real good value out of the solutions we're selling. Anybody has been selling to the government and without the expectation that their customers have to get really good use and good ROI, probably has not been in this business for 20 years, and they're probably not planning on being in this business for a long time. But the people in this audience, the people in this company who've been selling to the government for their entire career know this is a craft and this is something we all have to work on and get better at. And so when Harvey approached us with, hey, how can I help tell the story and help get some information to your vendor partners on what they're seeing and what are some sales ways of embracing this new approach to how do we simplify things and how do we make sure the government's getting really, really good value out of the solutions that they're deploying, and that they know, hey, the best way to get some of these efficiencies is through automation and through additional technology. Harvey came to us with that idea of getting in front of our vendors to have this conversation. So it's all about us collectively working to make a better job and do our craft better. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Harvey, who is our friend of our industry, friend of Carahsoft, runs Marion Square, Caitlin Lewis, who runs our market research team, and John Bonney, who is with Force Management. So Harvey and team, take it away. And guys, thanks everybody for being here. Harvey, thanks for doing this event today.
Absolutely, Craig. And listen, first off, I want to thank, before we get started here, you, Craig, and the team at Carahsoft, particularly Caitlin Lewis, who's on our panel today, and Sierra Connor, for all their support in pulling this session together. We couldn't have done without you, so we really appreciate it, and thanks very much. Just a quick background to get started on Marion Square for those of you who don't know us. We're an advisory firm dedicated to helping technology companies succeed in government markets. We've been a Carahsoft partner for many years, and whether your company is just entering the public sector space or scaling its existing government sales, we really specialize in both developing and aligning your go-to-market strategy and agency-specific needs and value drivers, such as ROI, mission impact, and procurement readiness. So next slide, I'll let John just give a quick background on Force Management.
Thanks, Harvey. Really appreciate it. And thank you to the entire team for having Force Management be a part of this, and welcome everybody to the call. My name is John Boney with Force Management. I'm thrilled to have you join us as we delve into the intricacies of the go-to-market strategies for elite sales teams, specifically those that are focused on selling in the federal government. At Force Management, our strength for over 20 years lies in our experience and our tangible results that we've achieved over the years. We specialize in developing elite sales teams through customized programs that drive cross-functional alignment with positive business outcomes. Our approach is practical and relevant, providing a tailored content that meets specific needs to your government buyers, and especially in these dynamic market conditions that we're all faced with today. We really focus on rep adoption and measurable results, ensuring that our sales process aligns with these new government priorities and how your team can effectively articulate ROI and differentiation as it relates to government mandates. So by persevering with value to the procurement teams, to aligning to the buyer needs, we're going to help to increase contract values and improve renewal rates. So we're excited to be here today. Thanks for joining, and I will now pass it on to the rest of the team to move forward.
Yeah, great. Thanks, John. So again, I'm excited to lead the discussion today around what I think is a very relevant topic for technology vendors selling to the U.S. government. You know, at Marion Square, we track the federal technology market really closely for our clients. And we've seen a lot of uncertainty with technology vendors lately, especially around DOGE and what it means for technology procurements. You know, as we see it at Marion Square, technology companies today are really at a crossroads, right? You have two choices. You can, one, lean in and adapt to this new government buying environment, or two, hold back and risk really losing relevance and the opportunity we feel to create a great deal of revenue and value for your company. The reality based on real data is this, and we're going to cover some of this. The government hasn't stopped spending, right? And again, we're going to give you some examples as we go through this. Instead, we look at it as the government is refocusing. They're prioritizing on solutions that show reduced cost, deliver measurable ROI, and improve mission critical outcomes. So for companies that can clearly communicate value, offer flexible procurement options, and help agencies do more with less, the opportunities are out there. And that's exactly what we're going to dive into today, is how to position your technology to win in this evolving landscape. Next slide, please, Abby. So let's cover some quick facts on DOGE as really kind of a background and set the stage. Again, there's a lot of noise out there right now, especially from technology vendors about delays, cancellations, potentially pulled solicitations. But the real story isn't about spending cuts, as you're going to see here. It's really about a strategic shift in how agencies evaluate what they buy. So under DOGE, government isn't spending less, it's actually demanding more from software vendors. So things like more accountability, this is really critical, more measurable outcomes, and more alignment with mission needs, right? This means agencies are under pressure to really justify each and every investment that they make. So with that, solutions must prove they can drive cost savings, prove they can improve efficiencies, and support outcomes that really matter. And for vendors, this is a moment to really sharpen your value proposition, right? So can you show ROI? Can you prove mission impact? If the answer is yes, then there's opportunities out there for you now. So the question really isn't whether government is still buying, it's whether you're showing up with a solution that meets the new standard. Next slide, Abby. There's a big misconception out there that, DOGE is causing all of these cancellations, right? Cancellations, rescinded solicitations are all something that's new or a sign that government spending is drying up under DOGE. The reality is, the adjustments that you're seeing have always been part of the federal landscape. Agencies routinely reevaluate priorities, redirect funding, or terminate projects that don't perform. What's different today is the level of transparency and the heightened demand for results. Under DOGE, the spotlight is brighter. Every program is expected to show impact that is measurable, that is mission aligned, and is cost effective. Projects that fall short are more than likely to be paused or cut. So here's just a few examples, right, of major projects and programs that have been canceled prior to DOGE, just to kind of put this into perspective. Let's now take a look at some of the proof points that show government is actually spending, right? And they're not only spending and it's continuing, but it's being channeled towards the right kinds of solutions. So first, the top line numbers, and this came right off the federal IT dashboard, right? Agencies have spent more than $102 billion this fiscal year on IT initiatives, spanning development, modernization, and operations. Right? And this is not a behavior of a market that's pulling back. I think it's actually a behavior of one that is starting to prioritize outcomes. Right? We're seeing specific agencies actually increase their spending in meaningful ways. So just starting to track it again, this is what we do at Marion Square regularly. Department of Veterans Affairs, Q1 of last year to Q1 of this year, actually their spending is up over 29%. And it's driven by a push to modernize benefit systems, health platforms, and service delivery. The State Department spending, again, year over year, Q1 to Q1, is up over 6%, actually almost 10%, investing in secure digital infrastructure and global mission support. Now, what's equally as important is how the money is being spent. Agencies are relying more heavily on contract vehicles like GSA Mass, SOUP, Alliant 2. And again, this is good news for you all because it's all designed to speed up procurement, reduce risk, and really streamline access to commercial technologies. So not only is government spending more, but what we're seeing is they're trying to find ways to spend the money quicker, right? So if your solution is available on these vehicles or you're partnered with Carahsoft, you're aligned with how government wants to buy now. So the bottom line is federal government is spending aggressively in areas that support modernization, automation, operational efficiencies. And if you can clearly show how your solution contributes to these goals, I think there's a significant opportunity for you in this environment. Next slide, please, Abby. And we're seeing this trend, reflected directly in the earnings reports of some of the leading technology and government services companies out there. So again, these are all publicly traded companies that have posted earnings recently, and this has been comments right out of their earnings reports. So Leidos reported a 7% year-over-year revenue increase, right? Citing strong federal demand across all of their segments. Palantir landed a $30 million contract with ICE and explicitly credited their alignment with DOGE principles in their earning calls, positioning themselves as a solution provider that improves efficiency and decision making. ServiceNow saw a 30% increase in public sector revenue, where they added 6 new government clients, and their CEO specifically stated agencies are buying solutions that boost efficiency and productivity under DOGE. Next slide, please, Abby. So far we've seen proof that federal agency spending hasn't slowed, right? It's simply been redeployed towards more accountable, impact-driven investments. But I mean, I think there's even more good news when you look at the recent government mandates. Executive orders and OMB guidance are not just calling for cost control, they're explicitly prioritizing modernization, use of commercial technology, and streamlined procurements. Again, all this is good news for technology vendors. So some examples, you take the DOGE mandate. It includes a software modernization initiative focused on eliminating costly legacy systems and improving interoperability. I mean, that's a direct opportunity for vendors offering cloud, automation, integration, and COT software. Or look at the recent OMB 2522, and it requires agencies to invest in AI tools that are going to improve mission outcomes, mandates, and use flexible procurement methods like GSA schedules and OTAs to actually speed up procurement and adoption. So as a longtime, government sales rep, hearing or seeing it mandated that we want to eliminate unnecessary provisions and streamline procurement processes is really, good news to my ears. Next slide, please, Abby. So if you start to bottom line this, if you want to win in this environment, it's not enough to have a great product. You need to lead with value, quantifiable, mission aligned, and easy to procure, right? Those are the values. Agencies are no longer buying based on features or even innovation alone. I've heard several folks say this now. Agencies are starting to buy outcomes. Can your solution help reduce costs, eliminate manual processes, support compliance, scale efficiently across the enterprise, right? These are all things you need to understand and be able to articulate. Agencies are under pressure to buy smarter through streamlined vehicles, GSA Mass, OTAs, GWACs. If you're not already on these contracts or partnering with Carahsoft, who is, right, this is going to be a barrier to you. So the go-to-market playbook, as we're seeing, is pretty clear. Focus on solving real, high-priority pain points and be able to prove that you can solve these pain points, and that's going to be key. Speak the language of ROI and mission impact. That's not just as you do a presentation, but also as you're doing your outreach and trying to get the attention of those government folks to meet with you. And make it easy to buy your solution, right? Vendors that are getting this right have an opportunity to grow and grow fast. Next slide, please, Abby. And again, everything we've discussed is not just opinion, it's actually baked into current policy. As we mentioned, OMB 2522 is one of the clearest examples. It explicitly requires agencies to prioritize AI solutions that drive measurable outcomes, right? Better performance, increased productivity, or reduce cost. I mean, that's in the mandate. And that's the ROI lens in action, right? Mandated really at the highest level. But then it doesn't stop there. The memo also calls for use of streamlined procurement strategies to move quickly and reduce friction in adoption, right? So you need to make sure your solutions not only meet these criteria, but just as important, and again, we're going to talk about this in the panel discussion, you're able to articulate this to government. Next slide, please, Abby. So this is the last example, but this I think is a really good example of how your messaging needs to evolve. On the left, I kind of think is the old way, right? Feature-based messaging. It focuses on what your product does, its technical description, but it doesn't speak to outcome. And in today's federal environment, that's just not going to be enough, as we've discussed. On the right hand, you see what it looks like when the messaging is value-based and aligned with DOGE priorities, right? Every statement ties back to a mission outcome, a financial impact, or a measurable efficiency gain. This is what resonates with today's buyers, right? Messages that show your solution cuts processing time, avoids unnecessary cost, improves speed, or better enables decision making in the field. The takeaway here is simple. If your pitch still sounds like the left column, it's time to evolve, right? So just something to think about as you look at this. And I've been to RSA, I've participated in a recent quantum forum, as well as multiple AI forums over the last couple of months where government has spoke. And I'm surprised because they're all talking the right-hand side now, not the left-hand side. Next slide, please, Abby. So we've walked through the shift, what government's prioritizing, and how that's shown up in mandates and funding, and what it means for companies and how they should position and sell their solutions. Now, every company in the market is having to navigate this challenge, right? How do you adapt your message, your pricing, and your go-to-market to align with the new government procurement environment? And that's why, again, we've brought together this great panel today. So let's turn to them now, and we'll get some real-world perspectives on how tech companies should adapt to succeed. So with that, if you all have questions and want to put them in the chat, please start with that. We've got a set of questions here for the panel, but we'll start with the questions in the chat. So, Caitlin, we'll send the first question to you and the Carahsoft team because you see such a broad swath of government and you work with so many different vendors. How's Carahsoft seeing federal buying behavior shift in the first few months of this new administration? Again, particularly around IT and software categories.
Great question. So I think in short, I think we can all agree things have changed dramatically. But overall, and Harvey, you said it best, right? The goal is to streamline procurement and rethink how government approaches IT buying altogether. So while streamlining procurement, it's not a new concept, but this agency is aggressively accelerating it. We've seen government in the past try to streamline procurement with efforts like GSA mass consolidation and other moves that really signaled that desire to simplify how government buys and manages technology. But what's really, really different about this time is that there's urgency and the expectations are a lot higher. So it feels like we've all had to throw out the old playbook out this window and just really start building one in real time. And that's not easy, especially when government itself is still trying to figure out how to implement these changes effectively. And, to kind of quote Elon, he said, "Hey, we're not going to bat 1,000%." And really, that reality makes it difficult for us to confidently align to what these priorities are going to be. But with that being said, I think there's some clear signals. And Abby, I think I have a slide on the federal CIO chart. I think it might be yep, perfect. And I think one of the clear signals here is in the recent wave of software inventory requests being issued by the federal CIO. And as Craig mentioned earlier, like if you've received one, you've probably seen the fields that go above and beyond just asking for the license counts or the user metrics. It's now asking those questions. Is the solution mission critical? And Harvey, you said it too. What outcomes does this support? What is the ROI? And I think that really reflects a broader shift that the government is no longer just buying these features and functions. They're demanding the cost savings. They are demanding the efficiency. They are demanding the outcomes. And they want to understand those value drivers for how a solution ties to mission impact, the workforce productivity, with cybersecurity readiness, and just, again, overall measurable ROI. So long story short, I know it's a little long-winded, but yes, buying behavior is shifting and it's shifting fast. And the path to execution is still evolving, but I think the message is clear. To really stand out in today's environment, we need to focus on delivering real-time value and mission input um, input, impact, and it's an opportunity for all of us to align more closely with the government and their goals to show that our solutions can make a difference.
Yeah, thanks, Caitlin. I agree with that 100%. We're starting to see those shifts as well. And one of the things I want to dive into here just a little bit, because we're hearing it more and more and more, is this notion of value drivers, right? Not only understanding the value drivers, but being able to present those value drivers. And John, I'll kind of turn to you, because for a lot of folks in government, value drivers, or the concept of that, is a new concept. So maybe you can give us a high level overview of what exactly does that mean. And the other question I'm really interested in too is, how do these value drivers differ from, say, a product benefit or a feature?
Yeah, really good question, Harvey, that we get all the time with the clients that we work with. And you've already said some key words as it relates to these value drivers. And those are the outcomes, making sure there's efficiency gains, making sure that there's cost reductions, things along those lines. And so when we talk about value drivers in the federal space, we're really referring to those strategic outcomes, or, as was well said, mission critical priorities. What are the mission critical priorities that they're trying to accomplish within that agency, and how they're trying to achieve those? These are the levers that when we pull on them, we create measurable impact. And that key word there is the measurable impact. Can we quantify it? Whether it's improving national security, or increasing citizens' access to services, or reducing fraud, or achieving compliance mandates with executive orders that are being released. So, things that we think about when we think about features, that's going to describe what our product does. And the benefits of that are what our product might help with. And a value driver is why it matters. Why does it matter to the agency? Why does it matter to the department? So that they can understand it in specific contexts. So within federal sales, aligning the value drivers means understanding how your solution helps the agency advance its mission, or meet legislative mandates, or achieve performance goals under scrutiny from Congress or OMB or other watchdogs that are out there. So, we have examples of what's the value driver versus a feature. A feature might be automated data classification, as an example. The benefit of that is reducing manual workload. But the value driver is ensuring that compliance with CUI handling under NIST 800-171, excuse me, to avoid audit risk and mission disruption. And so that's where we start getting into the differences of, we're bringing true value back to the agency or to the department versus a feature or function. The days of selling on features and functions and buying software just to buy software, they're years behind us. We've got to be bringing the value back to the customers.
Yeah.
Back to you, Harvey.
Yeah, no, thank you. And maybe just a follow-on question for that. I mean, I think a lot of sales reps and folks out there think they know what agencies care about, but don't always ask the right questions, right? To really kind of uncover it and validate that. So, what's your advice on working with sales folks and sales teams to really uncover true agency value drivers during, say, a discovery session, or, a planning meeting, or those types of things with your government contacts?
Yeah, another great question. And I think we might have a slide that's kind of some of the essential questions that we think about. And these are just some high level questions that we think about. And so to kind of get us into the mindset of asking about value drivers, we got to stop leading with our solution, stop leading with the features and functions, and take the time to understand and be curious about the mission and what they're trying to accomplish. So what are the outcomes that drive our government buyers? Again, the key word being the outcomes. Great discovery in federal sales is all about contextual intelligence, right? Like understanding really what's happening to accomplish the mission that they're trying to accomplish, and understanding their strategic plan, and some of the things that are coming from GAO, right? Like knowing the reports, what the IG might be finding from a standpoint of what they're looking at, and any budget justifications that are out there. And so some of the questions that come up, like it could be, what are the top 3 outcomes your team is accountable for this year? And again, keyword, what are the outcomes they're looking for? Explore some of the constraints that they're under. What's standing in the way of achieving those outcomes? What are the obstacles that they're faced with? Understand the political and operational pressure that they may be under. What's getting attention from leadership or oversight that's going to get in the way of making these decisions today? And all of this has to tie back to an ROI, right? It is critical that we're starting to understand, especially the R in the ROI. What's the return going to be for that agency or department and then aligning that with the procurement process, right? Get involved early with that procurement process, understand their goals and their needs and their pains. So, because at the end of the day, we share the same customer. And the procurement folks, oftentimes, they're not educated on why this purchase is being made. They're just told to go procure it. So the more time we can spend to understand what is it, how can we work together to get our end customer to be happy, that is going to be critical to the process.
Yeah, no, I would agree. The other thing that I'm, talking with our clients about at Marion Square is not just uncovering sort of the value drivers, what's the ROI that you're looking for, the improvement in efficiencies and mission alignment, but being able to clearly show and articulate that in a message then to the government, hey, this is what it is. But then I think also taking it one step further is, in the past, we've always advised our clients to come up with a generic RFP or a generic RFI to help government out, right? Because government will say, well, we got to create an RFP. We have a generic one that will help you out. And a lot of times they go, hey, that's great, thank you. And that almost puts you in the driver's seat. I also look at this and I'm thinking about creating that framework that you can sit with a buyer, sit with your customer and say, this is how you create an ROI using our technology, right? Because what's going to happen is you're going to buy it, you're going to deploy it, and then a government oversight board or committee is going to say, okay, show me the value you're getting from this. Show me the ROI you're getting from this. So enabling them or helping them to be able to develop that, I think is going to be another critical piece that we're going to have to work with companies on. Now, we mentioned, ROI, those sorts of things as value drivers. The other big thing that's coming out of this for government value driver is ease of procurement. Like, hey, we want to be able to buy this and we want to be able to buy it very quickly, efficiently, and easily. So Caitlin, kind of a follow-up question to you. I know you guys, again, support this vast ecosystem of technology partners, but can you maybe walk us through some of the key contract vehicles that you're offering and how they're helping vendors align with these agency priorities today? And as you're hopping in here, just one quick thing. I've got a couple of questions that have come out talking about, is this going to have any effect on SOUP? Because we've talked a lot about GSA and those sorts of things. Is SOUP still going to be something that's, leveraged and used? And then another question we got from the audience is, what's the best way to engage with some of these GSA OneGov initiatives that Craig had kind of mentioned earlier on in his discussion? So we're reading the questions as a side note to everybody. If you've got them, continue to come in and we'll answer them as we go through this.
Okay, so 5 questions to answer. All right.
You can do it. I trust you.
So I think one of the core strengths of Carahsoft is our access and our experience with a broad portfolio of government-wide and even agency-specific contract vehicle, which includes the GSA's MES, NASA SOUP, Army ITES, and many others that cover civilian, defense, intelligence sectors. But to kind of hone in a little bit on the SOUP comment, again, it's still an evolving landscape. I know that there's been some letters going out about, hey, we want to protect SOUP, we want to keep SOUP. There's still discussions going on behind closed doors that we don't really know what's being discussed. So my advice to you guys right now, business as usual until we can, help you guys figure it out. And if something does happen, I want you guys to know that we are all here for you guys to help you through this and to navigate through this. And again, Carahsoft has access to contract vehicles, other contract vehicles that can be leveraged across the entire federal government. So don't think that you guys are losing access to your customers. Again, we can help you guys get access, especially on our GSA schedule, because that seems where a lot of this procurement is going to be shifting towards. And these contracts aren't just convenient, they're really strategic for government. They align with how agencies prefer to buy today, which is quickly, compliantly, and with confidence in both price and performance. So all of our partners, all of our reseller partners, managed service providers, these vehicles streamline procurement significantly. And instead of navigating a complex agency by agency contracting strategy, you guys can plug into Carahsoft's contracts and immediately start selling through these competed, pre-vetted vehicles that not only accelerate the sales cycle, it removes that major friction points. And as Craig mentioned earlier, we've seen major wins with solutions like Google's Gemini, Adobe's Paperless Government Solutions, and Salesforce Slack being available through GSA Schedule, specifically through Carahsoft's GSA Schedule. And these were successful in large part because they aligned with the value drivers and were delivered through existing flexible procurement pathways. And it is also available for reseller partners, MSP partners to leverage through a standard deal flow, margin structure for these products. So please utilize it. And really, at the end of the day, it's about meeting the government where they're at. Agency wants cost effective, outcome driven. That's the buzzword for today, outcome. But they also want to buy them without jumping through all the hoops,
Yeah.
right? We're seeing that a lot with how they're trying to restructure the FAR, streamlining procurement, all the executive orders. And really, our role here at Carahsoft is to remove those hurdles for you and help our partners scale within the federal marketplace faster, smarter, and with greater visibility to those decision makers.
Yeah. Yeah. So Caitlin, I hear 100% what you're saying and agree with it. One of the things that we at Marion Square always advise our clients to do, and would love your kind of thoughts on it, is we tell them, hey, when you get to a point where government is asking for a proposal, government is saying, hey, we want to figure out how to buy your solution, like you
Mhm.
need to bring your Carahsoft rep into those discussions. Because, in the past, your procurement officer may have said, hey, I know exactly how I want to buy this, don't worry about it. But I think today they're going to be open to a discussion and what are their options to be able to purchase something like this, and having your Carahsoft rep on those phones with you or on that discussion with you to help sort of map out, these are your options, right? Here's how
Mhm.
we can help you. I think is something critical. And again, we continue to advise our clients to do that, but just curious as to your thoughts on that as well.
To my thoughts on.
On having your Carahsoft rep there with you.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Really, our goal is to help you guys navigate the complexities here. And as I mentioned before, hey, we've helped negotiate a lot with this new government. So please lean on us, bring us into conversations, and we have access to, I'm going to say all the right, resources to align with this new administration's goal
Yep.
of streamlining the procurement.
Wonderful. Yeah, get them involved early would be, I
Yes,
think, the bottom
yes.
line from that, so they can really help
Absolutely.
us out. So John, kind of going back, as we talk about these value drivers and kind of wrap this discussion up, like once you've identified what these value drivers are, right? What's sort of best practices to make sure you can start to integrate that, right, into your sales narrative, into, across your sales teams, not just your account exec, but also your application engineer, maybe your proposal development team. Like, how do you start to get that mindset across the organization and
Yeah,
make
good
sure that's
question.
spread?
Yeah, another great question. So I think, again, we have a slide on this. Abby, if you don't mind putting that up there, that'd be awesome. So I think, when we think about how to get this into the rest of the organization, there's a lot of moving parts to make that happen, but see it successful quite often. And it's actually the value-based conversation slide, Abby, if you wouldn't mind. The first thing we need to do is be able to translate our solutions capabilities into the language of the agency's mission, right? And that we've got to speak their language. And so there's this concept of a value framework, and having a conversation with them and mapping our conversation to what it is we're trying to understand. And this very high level overview of what we're looking at on the screen is understanding where they currently are, where they want to go, what's going to be required to get there, and what stories can we tell as it relates to that. So again, the structure of the narrative when we're trying to integrate this in is understanding what's the agency trying to solve for and getting really clear on that. And again, speaking their language. What happens if they don't solve it? So again, what's the negative consequence of that happening if they don't solve that problem? And is there an outcome that they're aiming for? Clearly there is. And do we understand what that outcome is? And then how does our offering uniquely enable that outcome to happen? and then aligning that to the team with, the account executive, the SE, and others that might be involved. That specific language, for example, if we're selling to DHS and we're talking about threat detection latency, if we're talking to VA, we're talking about veteran experience scores. And it says that we're not just talking about software, we're talking about enabling the success. So it's again talking about those things. And so if we, another challenge that comes in with that is we might have multiple stakeholders within the opportunity and aligning the narrative to each person's value lens. And so again, it's if, where we see some struggles with that might be with, maybe the SE community is thinking that, we've got to talk technical, and it's again, bringing that conversation back to talk about the outcomes on how that technical solution ties back to those outcomes. If we're all speaking that same language, again, we're driving a story that is consistent across the agency and what they're looking to solve for.
Yep, that's great. So Caitlin, one of the other things I wanted to make sure we talked about here in a value driver, because we're talking about, the presentation, we're talking about the marketing materials and how we, show ROI, show the ability to improve efficiencies and effectiveness and meet mission alignment. But the other thing we're seeing a lot about is packaging and pricing. And how can you become flexible in helping the government buy, right? So it's more than just the contract vehicle from a buying perspective.
Right.
It's the actual proposal itself. So maybe you can give us some ideas or thoughts or things you're seeing around that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think right now, the key is to think big and to think scalable. We're seeing strong momentum around enterprise licensing agreements, particularly those that can be used across sub-agencies, departments, or mission areas. So these models allow the government to simplify the procurement, it drives volume-based savings, and it shows that measurable ROI across the enterprise. I'm also going to say ROI, right, is those big headlines that we typically see in the news, right? So if your solution can scale, agencies are ready to talk. And with that being said, we're also seeing a increasing demand for agile licensing and pricing structures, especially as agencies face those budget uncertainties and shifting program priorities. A major trend is also going to be the shorter performance period timelines. So we've seen requests for 6 months to 3 months commitments at our renewals instead of the traditional 12-month terms. And agencies are being cautious and they want the flexibility to adapt based on mission needs and funding. And I think this is where internal alignment becomes so critical, guys. Your product, your finance, your sales teams, you all need to be on the same page. Take the time to review pricing strategies with your corporate and with product leadership and educate them on why government customers need more flexible options right now. And we can support those conversations. I don't want you guys to think that you have to figure this out all on your own. That's why we are here. We're here to help you guys build the business case and ensure that your licensing models resonate in today's procurement environment. So whether it's enterprise licensing, short-term performance periods, or creative bundling, the bottom line is that, hey, your pricing strategy needs to match the momentum, and we're all here to help you guys make that happen.
Yep. John, if you have anything you wanted to maybe add there around pricing and packaging and how you all look at that?
Yeah, when we're talking about pricing and packaging and building that proposal together from a LAC standpoint, it's leading with the mission, it's quantifying that impact. It's so important to have the quantification of the impact that it's going to have using the metrics that matter to that agency, cost avoidance or time saved or risk reduced. Being able to show proof, what stories can we tell around all of this, leveraging the stories we have around our organizations that said, we've done this before, here was the problem, the solution, the results. And then mapping it back to the mandates, right? Referencing how our solution supports compliance with executive orders or legislation or agent-specifically initiatives. Those things, kind of bringing those together that align tightly with those value drivers, all kind of make the picture come much more clear to the agency or department we're working with.
Yep. So I'm going to take a few questions here from the audience. So one is, is it common for us to have prospective clients, meaning government, to ask which contract vehicles can we use? And I would say the answer to that is yes. And I think
Yeah.
even more and more, you're going to start to see that. Contracting officers generally are the ones that decide this is the approach to do it, or this is the approach we're going to take. But to know what their options are, I think is something that is really critical. And again, they may go, no, we're going to go down this path. This is what I want to do. But I think it's always valuable to say we have a set of options. Here's what those options are to really kind of improve your standing with that organization. Caitlin, I'll see if you've got any comments there to that.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. These contracting officers, they don't understand the channel. They don't know everything that's available to them. They don't know all the different ways that they can be procuring your products. And I have seen time and time again, customers do ask, hey, where are you selling your product at? Okay, is it on GSA? Is it on Soup? Oh, you guys have this contract. Okay, we will release it there. And 9 times out of 10, they release it where we say, hey, this is where you can buy this offering from. So they're willing to flex so that they can buy the best possible solution for them.
Yep, great. Another question we've got here is what's our take on DOGE's perception of FedRAMP? Right? Do we see DOGE pushing FedRAMP more forcefully with IT vendors? So my comment is FedRAMP was signed into law, so I don't think FedRAMP is going anywhere.
Nope.
What I do think there's going to be more onus put on the software vendors. I mean, I think you saw the Swift RFIs that have come out from DoD where they're trying to figure out what set of artifacts government needs to collect from vendors to show, hey, you are compliant with a lot of these things. I've also heard rumors that the requirement for a federal sponsor is going to go away potentially as well. So I think FedRAMP requirements are going to be there. I think how you achieve those requirements is kind of in a state of flux and what's being figured out. From a purely DOGE perspective, I could see them saying we're going to force a lot of this down on the vendor to kind of prove to us you're ready to go. But Caitlin, I don't know if you've got any insight or thoughts on that as well.
Again, you did a great job explaining it.
Thank you.
But I think the one thing I want to kind of put into perspective is the day that I feel like, not I feel like, but when FedRAMP 20X was announced, if those who are watching the FedRAMP marketplace, everybody who was in process or ready, right, not fully at the low or the moderate kind of level, immediately they got it that next day.
Yeah.
So they are trying to find a way to make this quicker because they know that something like FedRAMP is needed. I know right now they're in a pilot phase 1 of their 20X initiative. And we have a great program manager here at Carahsoft. I'm going to give him a quick shout out, Drew Shear. I think he's also on the line today too. So if you guys have any questions on that, please feel free to reach out to me and I can get you guys connected with him.
Great. Now, another one that's come up here is, we talk a lot about spending increasing in a lot of areas, but clearly spending has been decreased in a lot of areas as well. And I know, Caitlin, you've got some, I think, some words to use and words not to use. And I think those go right along with what's being funded and what's not being funded, right? So, at least at a high level, from my perspective and what we've seen, anything to do with, DEI has been pretty much removed or replaced. Anything to do with, green energy, that sort of stuff has been removed and replaced. And there was a lot of money in the budget set aside for those things. And also, if you look at a lot of the money that was set aside in the previous years around establishing guardrails and establishing, gates and checks around artificial intelligence, those have all really kind of been removed. Now, those have been removed, but I think the money's being reallocated towards how do we now buy this faster? How do we do this quicker? How do we get this stuff to market and in the hands of federal employees that much faster? So I don't know, Caitlin, if you want to add anything to that as well.
Um, you nailed it, Harvey. I think the one thing I do want to let this group know, especially around like DEI, it's especially if there was the funding was coming from like a DEI based program. That's probably the reason why we're seeing a lot of those contracts being um, being cut right now. But a lot of the funding, it's going to go towards AI, it's going to go towards cybersecurity, it's going to go towards really just making sure, like Harvey said, hey, the technology is getting to government quicker, but it's also getting to its constituents quicker too.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that is a big part of their platform right now.
Yep. So, John, I think here's a former or a current customer of Force Management asking about, are there recommendations to work with key stakeholders on sort of pure net new opportunities? It sounds like they've been through your command of message program and are more interested now in it. So are there recommendations to work with key stakeholders on pure net new?
Yeah, good question. I saw that pop up in the chat and I was hoping we would get to it before our
Yeah.
time came to an end here. And when we're thinking about net new and working with those stakeholders, again, a lot of the things that have been talked about from both your perspective, Harvey, and Caitlin's of, understanding what are the key priorities that they have and how are we going to improve efficiencies and how are we going to reduce cost in some cases, and doing our homework up front, like understanding what it is that those agencies are really focused on and being able to quantify the impact that it's going to be able to have. That can come through the tremendous amount of information that's out in front of us every single day. That's public information we have access to. And then again, it's making sure that when we're talking about the things that we can do to help that agency or department, how can we tie that back to the value that they have to entice that stakeholder that it's important for them to make a decision to move forward, right? So again, it's quantifying it, it's understanding that pain point, that value driver that's important to them, and then how do we tie the things that we can do to solve for those problems to help them resolve the issues that they have. Again, everybody's trying to do more with less, and less is happening. And so how do we associate the value that we bring to solve for those problems is going to help us get to those stakeholders, to get to the net new, to solve those problems.
Yep. So here's another question, I think, which is a good example. The question is, how important is zero trust compliance in the DOGE environment, right? So what I would tell you is zero trust is a requirement. It is not going away. From a DOGE perspective now, it's how do you come in as a product vendor, a technology provider, and show government that you can do things like, hey, we can make you compliant the most cost-effective manner with our solution, and here's where we fit. Hey, we can come in and leverage the existing ecosystem that you have. Therefore, you don't have to pull out a bunch of products that you currently have and replace them to make our solution make you compliant. So those are the types of things I think you need to think about. So we can save you money, right? And help you meet those mission objectives around zero trust is what you should be talking about from a technology perspective. And then follow up with, oh, and you can buy us on all these different vehicles that are going to make it very easy for you to procure, right? So I think that's, to answer that question, compliance isn't going away, and saying, hey, we can help you with compliance is a check, but now you need to have to take it the step further and talk about how you're going to save money, how you're going to reduce, and whether that's you're going to save money because you don't have to buy other technologies, you're going to save money because you consolidate two technologies into our technology. So now you have one. And to Caitlin, your point, it can scale enterprise wide, right? So take three technologies out, put ours in, and that's going to save you money. And then here's how you can actually buy that. So that's a question. I don't know, John, Caitlin, anything you want to add to that one?
I think just to reinforce a little bit of, hey guys, a lot of the initiatives that happened in the last administration, they're just being redefined, right? It's not going away. These are still mission critical programs. It's just there's a different platform in place. There's a new administration, they have new goals, new initiatives, but zero trust is still going to be very important.
Yep.
Yeah, totally agree. Zero trust is going to be critical. I think that's a key phrase that's out there right now that we all need to be aware of. And Caitlin, you just said it really well, that they're being rephrased, like it's being rephrased. What happened in the last administration, what's happening now, we've got to make sure, again, we're speaking that same language of who those stakeholders are. And if the language has changed, we've got to change our language with it. Harvey had a slide at the very beginning of this of, if this is what we're talking about in the past, we need to change the way we're phrasing our conversation. That's the message really behind all of this, and put it down into a nutshell. We've got to change the conversation. We're talking about the outcomes, understanding what's important to those agencies, and then having that conversation that aligns directly to it with the things we can do to solve.
Yep, I agree. So, Abby, with that, can you move? I've got one final slide here. I want to make sure we hit with everybody. So again, just some final thoughts and some takeaways, right? If there's one clear takeaway, I think from today's session, it's that the federal government hasn't stopped spending, but it has raised the bar, right? Agencies are demanding, more. They're demanding more value, more accountability, more alignment to mission outcomes. And Marion Square, along with our partners, Carahsoft and Force Management, really specialize in helping technology companies navigate this shift. We have engagements and programs specifically designed and focused around helping companies uncover value drivers, develop ROIs and compelling messaging, and putting together strategic contracting strategies and ensuring that these are all delivered in the most effective manner. So if you're interested in learning more about, how we can do these engagements or learning more about these engagements and how we can assist your organization, please reach out and connect with us. I know, Abby, you've got, I think, one more slide there. If you'll hit that, please. Yep. Here's our contact information. We actually have a QR code that leads to our website, which shows more information around the work that we're doing in the space. So we'd all welcome the opportunity to connect with you and talk more about this. And with that, I think it's right at 3 o'clock on the hour. So again, I want to thank Carahsoft for hosting this event. Again, we couldn't have done it without Craig and the team there, Sierra and Caitlin, yourself, and John. Again, Force Management team, thanks very much for your help as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and sign off. And there are some questions that were left. We'll get those answered out in an email to everybody as a follow-up. But again, thanks for everybody's time today, and have a good afternoon.